Thank you, gentlemen.
At some point during the 2025 Grand Prix Final, something happened that the figure skating world didn't have language for yet. Ilia Malinin landed his 7th clean quadruple jump of the program. Not his first, not his third, his 7th. Each one executed cleanly, each one ratified, each one adding to a total that the sport's entire competitive history had never approached. The judges had a scoring system. They had protocols, grade of execution scales, component mark guidelines, a comprehensive technical framework built over decades to evaluate the best figure skating in the world. It had never been tested quite like this. When you watch that program back, and if you haven't, stop what you're doing and watch it, there's a specific moment after the 7th jump lands where something in the arena shifts. Not loudly, the crowd reacts, obviously, but there's a quality to that reaction that's different from a normal competition response. It sounds like people trying to process something their brain doesn't have a category for yet. That's not a metaphor. That's literally what was happening. To understand what Ilia Malinin has done to this sport, you have to understand what the sport looked like before him. And to understand that, you have to understand what a quadruple jump actually requires. A quad jump, any quad jump, demands that a skater leave the ice, rotate 4 full times in less than a second, and land on a single blade moving backward with enough control to continue skating as if nothing extraordinary just occurred. The physics of this are genuinely hostile. The margin for error at 4 rotations is measured in fractions of a degree. The window for a clean landing is so narrow that most elite skaters spend years attempting a single quad variation before landing it with any consistency. There are 6 types of quadruple jumps. For most of figure skating's competitive history, landing all 6 cleanly in one program was the kind of thing you discussed theoretically, the way physicists discuss theoretical constructs. Interesting to think about. Not expected to materialize in a competition setting anytime soon. At the 2025 World Championships, Ilia Malinin landed all 6 in one program for the first time in the history of the sport. The number that should stop you is 7. Most elite skaters at the top of the world rankings include 2, maybe 3 quadruple jumps in a free skate. The risk-reward calculation is precise. Each quad attempted is a quad that could fall, and a fall costs more than the point value of a clean landing gains you. The strategic logic of quad allocation is something coaches and skaters spend enormous time on. 2 or 3, placed carefully, with backup options if the legs aren't there. Malinin's Grand Prix Final program contained 7. Not recklessly, not as a gamble, 7 clean quadruple jumps executed with the kind of technical consistency that makes them look, from a certain distance, almost routine, which is the most disorienting part. The way his skating makes the impossible look like something that simply needed doing. The scoring implications of this are significant, but the psychological implications are more interesting. Every other skater on the ice that day had prepared a program designed to compete with the best in the world. Malinin showed up with a program designed to compete with a version of the sport that doesn't exist yet. 3 World Championships, 2024, 2025, 2026, back to back to back. The word dynasty gets used prematurely in sports. It gets attached to athletes after 2 good seasons when what they've actually demonstrated is sustained excellence over a limited sample. 3 consecutive world titles in figure skating at Malinin's age, with the technical content he's deploying, is not a dynasty in the borrowed sense of the word. It's something that requires its own vocabulary. Nathan Chen won 6 consecutive world titles. That achievement belongs in a different conversation, the one about what sustained greatness looks like over time. What Malinin is doing right now, in the compressed window of his late teens and early 20s, is not the same conversation. It's the conversation about what happens when someone arrives at the boundary of physical possibility and decides the boundary is a suggestion rather than a limit. The Olympic team event gold medal sits alongside these world titles as a different kind of achievement, collective, dependent on the performance of others, earned in a context where the pressure distributes differently. It represents something the individual titles can't: the ability to perform under expectation as part of something larger than yourself, when the people around you are counting on it. He did that too, cleanly. There is an argument, made quietly in the parts of the skating world that speak carefully about this, that what Ilia Malinin is doing creates a problem for the sport. Not because his skating isn't extraordinary, it is, but because sporting competition requires the genuine possibility that more than one person could win. When one athlete's technical content is so far beyond the field that the outcome of a competition is effectively predetermined, the nature of the event changes. It becomes less a contest and more a demonstration. The scoring system partially addresses this through component marks, the artistic, presentation, and skating skills scores that evaluate the quality of performance beyond pure jump content. These are the categories where Malinin's gap in the field is theoretically closable, and there are competitions where those marks tell a more complicated story than the technical scores alone. But the technical lead is substantial, and the question of what competition means when that lead is large enough, that question doesn't have a clean answer. The sport hasn't needed one before now. The records themselves are almost secondary to the larger story they're telling. First to land all 6 quad types in one program. First to land 7 clean quad jumps in one program. 3 consecutive world titles. Olympic gold. These are milestones that will appear in the sports record books permanently. Future generations of skaters will read them the way skaters read the achievements of the legends who defined the sport before them. But records are static. They describe what happened once. They don't capture the quality of watching it happen, the specific feeling of being in an arena or sitting in front of a screen when someone does something you didn't think you were going to see in your lifetime and it turns out you were wrong. That feeling is what Ilia Malinin produces on a regular basis now. Not occasionally, not in peak moments, but as the baseline expectation for what showing up to watch him skate means. At 19, now 20 years old, with presumably decades of competitive skating still ahead, with a quad axel that remains the only ratified one in the sport's history, and a technical vocabulary that continues to expand, while everyone else is still trying to catch up to where he was 2 seasons ago. The question isn't what records he's broken. The question is what the sport looks like when he's done rewriting it. And that question doesn't have an answer yet. It will, eventually. But not before he lands something else nobody thought was possible. That part you can count on. If you watched that 2025 Grand Prix Final program and felt something you couldn't quite name, share this with someone who hasn't seen it yet. And if you want to understand the human being behind the records, the pressure, the cost, the private reality of being this, that video is there when you're ready.